The airport was buzzing with the usual chaos of travelers rushing to their gates, dragging suitcases and checking watches. Among them stood a woman who seemed different from the crowd. She wasn't just another passenger. She carried herself with an air of confidence that made people glance twice. Her name wasn't important right now, but her presence was undeniable. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, she walked toward the check-in counter with purpose. This was no ordinary traveler. This was someone used to commanding respect. She had every reason to feel proud. For years, she had worked tirelessly to build her company, a massive travel group worth nearly $1 billion. It specialized in luxury trips for wealthy clients, offering experiences most people could only dream of. But today, she wasn't thinking about business deals or global summits. Today, she was focused on getting through security and boarding her flight without any hassle. When she reached the counter, the agent greeted her with a forced smile. At first, everything seemed normal. The agent asked for her ticket and ID, glancing at the screen as she typed in details. Then came the moment that changed everything. As the woman spoke, her smooth accent, a blend of West African tones, filled the air. Instead of responding professionally, the agent paused, smirked, and said something shocking. "Oh, wow," the agent said mockingly. "Are you really flying first class? You don't sound like someone who can afford this." Her words hung in, the air sharp and cutting. Nearby passengers turned their heads, some out of curiosity, others out of discomfort. The comment stung, not because it was true, but because it was so dismissive. The woman froze for a split second, her mind racing. Should she laugh it off, ignore it, or confront the agent? But then she did what she always did when faced with ignorance. She stayed calm. With quiet dignity, she handed over her boarding pass and replied, "I assure you, I belong exactly where I am." Her voice was steady, almost gentle, but there was steel beneath it. Anyone paying attention would have noticed how carefully she chose her words. She didn't want to escalate things, but she also refused to let the insult slide unnoticed. Inside, though, emotions were swirling. Anger bubbled up, mixed with disappointment. She'd heard comments like this before, countless times throughout her life. People judged her based on her accent, assuming it meant she wasn't educated or successful enough to be where she was. But this time felt personal. This wasn't just some random stranger making assumptions. It was someone whose job was to serve customers with respect, regardless of who they were. As she stepped away from the counter, rolling her suitcase behind her, she couldn't shake the feeling that this needed to be addressed. Too often, moments like these went unchallenged, brushed aside as minor inconveniences. But deep down, she knew better. These small acts of prejudice added up, chipping away at people's dignity, day after day. By the time she found a quiet corner to sit and collect her thoughts, she realized something important. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all the people who had been laughed at, underestimated or dismissed because of how they spoke, looked, or carried themselves. And if she didn't say something now, who would? With determination growing in her chest, she pulled out her phone and started typing. What began as a private reflection soon turned into something bigger, an open letter meant to share her experience with the world. Little did she know, those few sentences would spark a movement far beyond anything she could have imagined. For now, though, she simply sat there, staring at the screen, rewriting her words until they captured exactly how she felt. Around her, the airport continued its chaotic hum, oblivious to the storm brewing in one small corner. If you looked closely at the woman sitting in that quiet corner of the airport, typing furiously on her phone, you might not guess the battles she'd fought to get where she was today. Her polished appearance and confident demeanor didn't just happen by chance. They were hard-earned, shaped by years of struggle, determination, and an unshakable belief in herself. She grew up in a small town, far from the glitz and glamour of luxury travel or international business deals. Life wasn't easy for her family. They didn't have much money, but they had something even more valuable: values. Her parents taught her the importance of education, hard work, and standing tall no matter what life threw her way. Her father, a teacher, spent his evenings reading books with her, encouraging her to dream big. Her mother, a seamstress, stitched clothes for neighbors while sharing stories about resilience and strength. From an early age, she learned to navigate challenges. At school, kids teased her for the way she spoke. The rhythm and melody of her voice didn't match what they were used to hearing. Teachers sometimes overlooked her because of it, assuming she wouldn't amount to much. But she didn't let their assumptions define her. Instead, she poured herself into her studies, determined to prove them wrong. Her efforts paid off when she earned scholarships to study abroad. Leaving home was bittersweet. She missed her family deeply, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter. For the first time, she found herself surrounded by people who appreciated her intelligence and drive. Still, the journey wasn't without its hurdles. In classrooms and workplaces, she faced subtle biases. People questioned whether she truly belonged, often doubting her abilities simply because of how she sounded or where she came from. But instead of letting those doubts crush her spirit, she used them as fuel. Every insult, every raised eyebrow pushed her to work harder, to show the world exactly what she was capable of. After finishing her education, she started working in the travel industry, a field she loved because it connected people across cultures. Over time, she built a reputation for being innovative, reliable, and fiercely passionate about creating opportunities for others. Eventually, she founded her own company. It wasn't easy at first. Starting a business is never simple, especially when you're breaking barriers in an industry dominated by certain types of voices. But she refused to give up. Slowly but surely, her company grew. What began as a small operation turned into a global powerhouse, earning millions of dollars each year. More importantly, it became known for championing diversity and inclusion. She made sure her team reflected the wide range of backgrounds and experiences she believed enriched the world. Despite her success, moments like the one at the airport still stung. They reminded her of all the times she'd been underestimated, dismissed or laughed at simply because she didn't fit someone's narrow idea of what success should look like. Each incident left a mark, but she carried them lightly, using them as reminders of why she kept pushing forward. As she finished drafting her open letter that evening, she thought about the countless others who had faced similar situations. How many people had been mocked for their accents or judged based on stereotypes? How many had swallowed their pride and walked away, too afraid to speak up? She knew she couldn't stay silent, not this time. The letter poured out of her heart, onto the screen. In it, she described the encounter at the airport, capturing both the absurdity and the pain of the moment. She wrote about the agent's comment, not to shame the individual, but to highlight a larger issue. When we laugh at someone's accent, she typed, we're really laughing at their story, their culture, their journey, everything that makes them unique. She ended the letter with a call to action, urging readers to reflect on their own biases and commit to treating everyone with respect. Then, hesitating only briefly, she hit post. Within minutes, notifications flooded. Her phone, friends, colleagues, and strangers alike shared her words, praising her courage and echoing her message. The response was overwhelming and completely unexpected. By morning, the post had gone viral. News outlets picked up the story, turning the spotlight onto the airline and sparking debates about discrimination in public spaces. People from all over the world chimed in, sharing their own experiences of being judged unfairly. Some talked about being mocked for their accents. Others recounted stories of being treated poorly because of their race, gender, or background. Suddenly, what had started as a personal reflection became part of a much bigger conversation. For her, though, the most powerful aspect of the reaction wasn't the numbers, it was the connections. Reading through comments and messages, she felt a sense of solidarity she hadn't expected. Strangers thanked her for speaking up, saying her words gave them the courage to confront their own struggles. Others promised to do better, vowing to challenge prejudice whenever they encountered it. Amid the whirlwind of attention, she remained grounded. She thought back to her parents' teachings, remembering how they always encouraged her to turn setbacks into stepping stones. This moment, painful as it was, had become an opportunity to educate, to inspire, and to push for change. As the day wore on, she realized something important. The incident at the airport hadn't broken her. If anything, it had strengthened her resolve. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. And if there was one thing, she knew for sure it was this: she wasn't going to stop until the world listened. The days following the viral post felt like a whirlwind. It was as if the entire world had paused to focus on one incident at an airport counter, a moment that, in hindsight, seemed so small but carried such weight. For the woman who shared her story, it wasn't just about calling out one person's behavior. It was about exposing a deeper issue, one that many people had faced, but few dared to speak about publicly. As the story spread, reactions poured in from every direction. Passengers who had been standing nearby during the incident came forward, confirming what she had written. Some even posted videos they'd taken secretly, capturing snippets of the exchange. These clips didn't show much, just the agent smirking and speaking with a dismissive tone, but they were enough to validate her account. Social media exploded with hashtags like "Respect Her Voice" and "Stop Accent Shaming." People from all walks of life joined the conversation, sharing their own stories of being judged or mocked for how they spoke. Journalists scrambled to cover the story, eager to get a piece of the action. News outlets ran headlines like "CEO speaks out after airport agent mocks her accent," and "Airline faces backlash over racist comments." Reporters reached out to her nonstop, asking for interviews, statements, and insights. At first, she ignored most of them. She wasn't interested in turning this into a media circus. But eventually she agreed to sit down for a few select interviews, not for herself, but because she saw an opportunity to amplify the message. In those interviews, she remained calm and composed, speaking with the same quiet strength that defined her. She didn't lash out or demand revenge. Instead, she talked about the importance of treating everyone with dignity, no matter where they came from or how they sounded. "This isn't about me," she said in one interview. "It's about creating a world where no one feels small because of who they are." While the public rallied behind her, the airline responsible for the incident found itself in hot water. Executives scrambled to respond, issuing a generic apology that read more like damage control than genuine remorse. "We regret any discomfort caused," the statement said, failing to acknowledge the seriousness of what had happened. To make matters worse, the airline refused to name the agent involved, claiming confidentiality policies prevented them from taking further action. Their response only fueled the fire. Critics called the apology weak and insincere, accusing the airline of prioritizing its image over accountability. Passengers began canceling flights, vowing never to fly with the carrier again. Influencers and activists urged others to boycott the airline until real change occurred. Even corporate partners started reconsidering their ties with the company. Behind closed doors, the woman made a decision that would send shockwaves through the industry. She gathered her leadership team for an emergency meeting. Together, they reviewed the company's extensive partnership agreements with the airline. For years, the airline had handled bookings for thousands of clients annually, making it one of their largest collaborators. Cutting ties wouldn't be easy. It would mean losing millions in revenue. But she didn't hesitate. "We can't work with a company that allows this kind of behavior," she told her team firmly. "If we stay silent, we're complicit. And I won't let that happen." By the next morning, the announcement was official. Global Horizon Travels, her $950 million travel group, was ending its partnership with the airline effective immediately. The news hit like a bombshell. Headlines blared across financial news platforms. Luxury travel giant cuts ties with airline over racist incident. Investors panicked, analysts predicted losses, and competitors watched closely, wondering if they should follow suit. For the airline, the consequences were swift and severe. Other companies began reevaluating their relationships too, fearing association with the growing scandal. Influential figures in industries ranging from tech to entertainment publicly praised the woman's bold move, amplifying her message of accountability. Within days, the airline's stock plummeted, wiping out millions in market value. But the fallout wasn't just financial, it was personal. Employees within the airline started speaking up, demanding better training and stricter policies against discrimination. Protests broke out at headquarters with workers holding signs that read, "Respect starts here," and "Enough is enough." The offending agent, identified in leaked security footage, was suspended pending investigation. Rumors swirled that she might face termination, though nothing was confirmed. Amid the chaos, the woman stayed focused. She knew the backlash wasn't just about punishing one person, it was about forcing systemic change. This wasn't the first time someone had been mocked for their accent, and unless something shifted, it wouldn't be the last. So, she took another step forward, using her platform to push for broader reforms. She announced the launch of a new initiative aimed at combating linguistic bias, the very thing she had experienced firsthand. Called the Accent Equality Initiative, it sought to promote cultural sensitivity and inclusivity in workplaces around the globe. The idea resonated deeply with audiences, drawing support from major corporations eager to align themselves with her vision. Donations poured in, allowing the initiative to expand rapidly. Through all of this, she remained grounded. Despite the attention and accolades, she never lost sight of why she was doing this. Every night, she reflected on her parents' teachings, reminding herself that true power lies not in vengeance but in transformation. She often thought about the agent who had laughed at her accent, wondering if the woman realized the magnitude of what she had set in motion. Would the agent learn from this? Would she understand the harm caused by her words? Or would she double down, refusing to see the bigger picture? These questions lingered in her mind, unanswered for now. But one thing was certain. The ripple effects of that single comment at the airport counter would continue to spread far beyond anyone's expectations. As the dust began to settle, the woman allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. What had started as a painful encounter had become a catalyst for change, a movement that transcended borders, industries, and backgrounds. And while the road ahead promised challenges, she felt ready to face them head-on. After all, she had spent her entire life proving that resilience could turn adversity into opportunity. This time, she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who deserved to be heard. The aftermath of the airport incident wasn't just a story about one company cutting ties with an airline. It was a domino effect, rippling across industries and sparking conversations that many had avoided for far too long. People who had never given much thought to accents or cultural biases suddenly found themselves questioning their own assumptions. And for the woman at the center of it all, the impact went far beyond anything she could have imagined. As news of the severed partnership spread, other businesses began reevaluating their relationships with the embattled airline. Hotels, tour operators, and travel agencies, many of which relied on the airline's services, started pulling back. Some canceled contracts outright, while others issued ultimatums: prove you're serious about change, or we'll take our business elsewhere. The message was clear. No one wanted to be associated with a brand that stood for prejudice, even if it was unintentional. For the airline, this was more than a PR nightmare. It was a full-blown crisis. Their executives held emergency meetings late into the night, trying to figure out how to salvage their reputation. Passengers were canceling flights in droves, and corporate clients were fleeing faster than they could count the losses. Social media buzzed with calls for accountability, and hashtags like #boycott the airline trended worldwide. Every attempt to downplay the situation only made things worse. Internally, tensions ran high. Employees staged protests outside the airline's headquarters, holding signs that read, "Respect our customers," and "We deserve better leadership." Many workers felt embarrassed to wear their uniforms, knowing that strangers might associate them with the controversy. Morale plummeted as staff demanded answers and action from management. In response, the airline announced sweeping reforms. They promised mandatory diversity training for all employees, updated customer service protocols, and stricter consequences for discriminatory behavior. But promises weren't enough. People wanted proof. Activists and watchdog groups kept a close eye on the airline, vowing to hold them accountable if they failed to deliver real change. Meanwhile, the woman behind the movement continued to lead by example. Her accent equality initiative gained momentum faster than anyone expected. Corporations lined up to partner with her, eager to align themselves with her vision of inclusivity. Schools adopted her curriculum modules, teaching students about cultural sensitivity and the value of diverse voices. Governments invited her to speak at conferences, where she shared insights on building workplaces that truly embraced equality. But perhaps the most surprising development came when influential figures from other industries stepped forward to support her cause. Athletes, musicians, and tech leaders used their platforms to amplify her message. One famous actor posted a video saying, "If we don't respect each other's stories, how can we expect to grow as a society?" Another entrepreneur pledged millions to fund programs aimed at combating linguistic bias. Slowly but surely, what had started as a personal stand against injustice turned into a global movement. Back at her company, the effects were undeniable. While ending the partnership with the airline meant losing significant revenue, it also opened doors to new opportunities. Clients flocked to Global Horizon Travels, drawn not only by its luxury offerings but also by its commitment to social justice. Competitors struggled to keep up, realizing too late that consumers cared deeply about values like fairness and respect. For the first time, the travel industry saw a shift, a growing demand for businesses that prioritized humanity over profit. Despite the whirlwind surrounding her, the woman stayed focused. She knew better than anyone that progress often came with resistance. There were still skeptics who dismissed her efforts as too idealistic or accused her of using the incident for publicity. Others argued that cutting ties with the airline was unnecessary, claiming she should have given them a chance to improve. But she remained steadfast. In interviews, she addressed these criticisms head-on. "Change doesn't happen because we wait for people to do the right thing," she said. During one talk show appearance, "It happens when we set standards and hold each other accountable. Yes, forgiveness is important, but so is action." Her words resonated deeply with audiences. People admired her ability to balance strength with compassion, to call out wrongdoing, without resorting to bitterness. She didn't demonize the airline or the agent who had mocked her accent. Instead, she framed the incident as a learning opportunity for everyone involved. Even as the spotlight shone brightly on her, she made sure to share it with others. In speeches and interviews, she highlighted the stories of everyday people who had faced similar challenges. A teacher from India talked about being ridiculed for his accent by students. A nurse from Nigeria described how colleagues questioned her competence based on how she spoke. A chef from Brazil shared how customers doubted the quality of her food simply because of her pronunciation. These voices became part of the narrative, reminding listeners that this wasn't just one person's fight. It was everyone's responsibility. As weeks turned into months, the airline began showing signs of improvement. New leadership took charge, implementing the reforms they had promised. Employee testimonials suggested that attitudes were shifting, albeit slowly. Passengers reported feeling treated with more respect, though trust would take time to rebuild. Critics watched closely, waiting for any misstep that could reignite the backlash. Through it all, the woman maintained her resolve, but also her openness to reconciliation. She believed in second chances, provided they were earned through genuine effort. When the airline reached out months later, expressing a desire to repair the relationship, she listened carefully. Their new CEO flew to meet her in person, apologizing sincerely and outlining the steps they had taken to address the issues. Though skeptical at first, she agreed to consider reinstating the partnership, but only under strict conditions. The airline would need to demonstrate measurable progress in areas like employee training and customer satisfaction. Regular audits would ensure compliance, and any slip-ups would result in immediate termination of the agreement. It was a risky move, but one she felt was necessary. "If we want real change," she explained in a statement, "we have to give people the chance to grow. Holding grudges won't fix anything, but working together might. The decision surprised many, including some of her closest allies. Critics accused her of being too lenient, while supporters praised her willingness to extend grace. But for her, it wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about creating a future where incidents like the one at the airport wouldn't happen again, not just for her sake, but for everyone's. As the dust settled, the ripple effects of her actions continued to unfold. Conversations about accents, bias, and inclusion became commonplace in boardrooms, classrooms, and living rooms alike. People began paying closer attention to the small moments that shaped interactions, the subtle comments, the dismissive tones, the assumptions that went unchallenged. And in those moments they remembered the woman who refused to stay silent, proving that even the quietest voices can spark the loudest revolutions. Months had passed since the airport incident, but its echoes still lingered in the air. The airline, once a giant in the industry, was now struggling to rebuild its reputation. The woman who had stood up to them wasn't surprised by this. It's what happens when trust is broken. But she also knew that redemption is possible, even for those who make mistakes. It all depends on how much effort they're willing to put into making things right. One day, an unexpected phone call came her way. On the other end of the line was the new CEO of the airline. He introduced himself and immediately got to the point. "I know we've made serious errors," he said, his voice heavy with sincerity. "But I want you to know we're committed to change. We owe it to our customers, our employees, and to you." She listened carefully, weighing his words. Apologies were easy to give, but actions spoke louder. Still, there was something genuine about his tone. He didn't try to defend the airline's past behavior or downplay the harm caused. Instead, he took full responsibility and outlined the steps they had taken to address the issues. Mandatory diversity training, updated customer service guidelines, stricter accountability measures. These weren't just promises anymore. They were being implemented. Impressed but cautious, she agreed to meet him in person. A few days later, he flew to New York to sit down with her. Over coffee, he shared stories of the challenges they faced internally. Some employees resisted the changes, arguing that the reforms were unnecessary or too extreme. Others felt overwhelmed, unsure how to adapt to the new expectations. Despite these hurdles, the CEO remained determined. "We messed up," he admitted, "and we're going to do whatever it takes to fix it." Their conversation lasted hours. She asked tough questions, probing for details about the airline's progress. How many employees had completed the training? Were there mechanisms in place to track improvements? What would happen if someone violated the new policies? To his credit, he answered honestly, providing data and examples to back up his claims. By the end of their meeting, she felt cautiously optimistic. The airline still had a long way to go, but they seemed sincere in their efforts. Still, forgiveness wasn't something she gave lightly. Trust needed to be earned, not handed out freely. After careful consideration, she decided to reinstate the partnership, but only under strict conditions. The agreement was clear. Global Horizon Travels would resume working with the airline, but any misstep would result in immediate termination of the deal. Regular audits would ensure compliance, and feedback from passengers would play a key role in evaluating progress. If the airline failed to meet the agreed-upon standards, there would be no second chances. When the news broke, reactions were mixed. Supporters praised her decision, calling it a bold step toward healing and reconciliation. Critics accused her of being too soft, arguing that the airline didn't deserve another chance. But she stood firm in her reasoning. "Forgiveness isn't forgetting," she explained in interviews. "It's creating space for growth. If we shut people out every time they make a mistake, how will they ever learn?" Her stance resonated with many. People admired her ability to balance compassion with accountability. She didn't let the airline off the hook. They had to work hard to prove themselves. But she also recognized their willingness to change. In doing so, she set an example for others. Holding someone accountable doesn't mean shutting the door forever. Sometimes it means keeping it slightly ajar, giving them the opportunity to walk through it with better intentions. As the partnership resumed, both sides approached it with caution. For the airline, It was a chance to rebuild trust and demonstrate their commitment to inclusivity. For her company, it was an opportunity to monitor progress and hold the airline to its promises. Passengers noticed the difference almost immediately. Agents at check-in counters were more attentive, friendlier, and less likely to make assumptions based on appearances or accents. Feedback forms showed steady improvement, though there were occasional hiccups along the way. Behind the scenes, the woman worked tirelessly to ensure the initiative stayed on track. She collaborated with the airline's leadership team, offering guidance on implementing effective training programs. Together, they developed workshops focused not just on avoiding discrimination, but on actively celebrating diversity. Employees learned how to appreciate different cultures, languages, and perspectives, not as obstacles to overcome, but as strengths to embrace. The impact extended beyond the airline itself. Other companies in the travel industry began adopting similar practices, inspired by the success of the partnership. Hotels started offering cultural sensitivity training for staff. Tour operators created campaigns highlighting the beauty of diverse voices and traditions. Even competitors, once hesitant to follow suit, joined the movement, realizing that inclusivity wasn't just good ethics, it was good business. For the woman, the journey was far from over. While the airline's transformation brought satisfaction, she knew that real change required constant vigilance. Prejudice doesn't disappear overnight. It takes consistent effort to root it out. That's why she continued expanding the Accent Equality Initiative, reaching communities around the world. Schools incorporated her materials into their curriculums, teaching children the importance of respecting differences. Governments consulted her expertise when drafting policies aimed at reducing bias in public spaces. Through it all, she remained humble. This wasn't about building a legacy or securing her place in history. It was about creating a world where no one felt small because of who they were. Every milestone achieved, every life touched, reminded her why she had started this journey. In the first place, looking back, she realized how much had changed, not just for her but for everyone involved. The airline had transformed from a symbol of arrogance and exclusion to a model of accountability and growth. Her company had grown stronger, its values resonating deeply with clients and partners alike, and countless individuals, inspired by her courage, had begun standing up against bias in their own lives. But perhaps the most profound change happened within herself. The incident at the airport could have left her bitter, resentful, or defeated. Instead, it fueled her determination to turn pain into purpose. She proved that adversity doesn't have to break you. It can shape you, strengthen you, and push you to become the person you were always meant to be. As she reflected on everything that had transpired, she thought about her parents. They had taught her to rise above challenges, to find meaning in struggles, and to believe in the power of resilience. Now, as she looked ahead, she carried their lessons with her, knowing that the fight for equality was far from finished. There would always be more battles to fight, more barriers to break, and more hearts to win over. But she was ready, for herself, for her community, and for generations to come. Years rolled by and the world kept spinning. The incident at the airport that had once seemed so personal now felt like a distant memory, a single thread in the tapestry of change woven over time. Yet its impact lingered, shaping lives and industries in ways no one could have predicted. For the woman who stood up to prejudice, it became more than just a moment of courage. It became a cornerstone of her legacy. Her company, Global Horizon Travels, soared to new heights. What had started as a small dream fueled by determination grew into a billion-dollar empire known not only for luxury, but also for humanity. Clients didn't just book trips through her. They invested in an experience rooted in respect and inclusivity. Ads showcased diverse travelers exploring breathtaking destinations, each story celebrating cultural richness and individuality. Competitors scrambled to keep up, realizing too late that success wasn't just about profit margins. It was about purpose. The Accent Equality Initiative flourished beyond her wildest dreams. It wasn't confined to boardrooms or corporate training anymore. It reached classrooms, neighborhoods, and even governments. Schools taught children to value differences instead of mocking them. Companies rewrote policies to ensure fairness across every level. Cities erected statues honoring unsung heroes who had fought similar battles, reminding future generations of the power of resilience. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation happened within people themselves. Conversations around accents, language, and identity shifted dramatically. People began listening, not just hearing but truly understanding the stories behind voices. They realized that an accent isn't something to ridicule, it's a badge of honor, a map of someone's journey through life. Strangers smiled instead of judging, asked questions instead of assuming, and celebrated diversity instead of fearing it. For the airline, redemption came slowly but surely. Under new leadership, they rebuilt their reputation brick by brick. Agents at counters greeted passengers with warmth and professionalism, regardless of how they spoke or where they came from. Customer feedback improved, and trust gradually returned. Though scars remained, they served as reminders of lessons learned and promises kept. The partnership between the airline and Global Horizon Travels thrived, becoming a model for collaboration in the industry. Together, they launched campaigns promoting cultural exchange, encouraging travelers to embrace unfamiliar traditions and perspectives. Their slogan said it all: travel is more than a destination, it's a connection. As for the woman herself, she never sought fame or fortune. She lived simply, surrounded by loved ones and driven by a quiet passion for justice. In interviews, she often spoke about her parents, crediting them for instilling values that guided her throughout life. "They taught me to turn pain into purpose," she'd say, her eyes soft with gratitude. "Everything I've done, I owe to them." Her memoir, titled Beyond Borders: My Journey Through Adversity and Triumph, became a bestseller. Written, in her own words, it captured not just the struggles she faced but also the triumphs she achieved and the hope she held for the future. Readers from all walks of life found inspiration in its pages, seeing reflections of their own battles and dreams. One reviewer wrote, "This isn't just a book, it's a call to action. It reminds us that we're stronger together, no matter our differences." Despite her achievements, she remained grounded. Fame didn't change her. If anything, it deepened her commitment to helping others. She traveled the world, speaking at conferences and meeting people whose lives had been touched by her work. A young student told her how the Accent Equality Initiative helped him overcome bullying at school. A flight attendant shared how her company's new training program made her feel valued for the first time in years. Each story reinforced her belief that even the smallest acts of kindness could spark monumental change. Still, she knew the fight wasn't over. Prejudice hadn't vanished. It had merely evolved, finding subtler forms to hide behind. Microaggressions persisted, systemic biases lingered, and inequalities continued to plague societies worldwide. But she refused to grow weary. Instead, she adapted, tackling new challenges with the same resolve that defined her journey from the start. One day, while visiting a rural village during a global summit, she met a little girl who reminded her of herself at that age. The child shyly approached her, clutching a worn notebook filled with scribbled notes and drawings. "I want to be like you when I grow up," the girl whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Tears welled up in the woman's eyes as she knelt down to meet the girl's gaze. "You already are," she replied softly. "All you need is courage and the belief that your voice matters." That moment stayed with her long after the summit ended. It reminded her why she kept fighting, why she refused to give up, even when the road ahead seemed uncertain. Change wasn't linear, it ebbed and flowed, taking 2 steps forward and sometimes 1 step back. But progress was still progress, no matter how slow. In her later years, she retreated from the spotlight, choosing to focus on mentoring the next generation of leaders. Young entrepreneurs, activists, and innovators flocked to her, eager to learn from her wisdom. She listened patiently, offering advice tailored to their unique journeys. "Never underestimate the power of your story," she'd tell them. "It has the ability to inspire, to heal, and to transform. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep, the world mourned the loss of a trailblazer, but celebrated the indelible mark she left behind. Tributes poured in from every corner of the globe. World leaders praised her courage. Celebrities honored her vision. Ordinary people shared how her actions had changed their lives forever. Her final message, delivered in a heartfelt speech months before her death, resonated deeply with those who heard it. We are all connected by our struggles, our hopes, and our humanity. When we lift each other up, we rise together. And when we choose love over fear, we create a world worth leaving for future generations. Today, her legacy endures, not in statues or headlines, but in the countless lives she touched. In schools, where children celebrate differences instead of mocking them. In workplaces where employees feel seen and valued. In airports where agents greet passengers with smiles instead of judgment. And in hearts around the world, beating with the rhythm of resilience. Because of her, the world became a little kinder, a little fairer, and a lot more united. And though she may be gone, her spirit lives on, in every voice that refuses to be silenced, in every hand extended in solidarity, and in every step taken toward a brighter tomorrow.